What's going on, guys? In this video we're going to talk about some Bitcoin predictions. We're going to look at Bitcoin on the chart, of course, and many of you know that today is the Fed meeting. By the time you watch this, we may have already got our results, but right now the Fed Watch tool is basically completely expecting a rate cut. 98% chance of a 25 basis point cut, 1.4% chance of leaving rates current. If somehow this is wrong and we don't get a rate cut, I think the market will be in shock and we would get a negative reaction. And because this is already so much expected, I'm uncertain if we'll get a huge reaction to the upside afterwards, at least a surprise reaction. Will we end this year strong? In my opinion, yes. Are we gonna rally like crazy on news of a rate cut? I'm not so certain, because this is basically completely expected. And I did want to mention there's a piece of inflation data that's coming right after the Fed meeting, and this is something that will be closely watched. This is going to be PCE, and it has been starting to rise. We came down to our low in September, and then in our last read in October, we came up to 2.3%. Our next read is in November, and this is coming up on December 20, just a few days from now. We want to see that this is staying lower. We don't want to see this ticking up into the mid twos. This is something that will be heavily watched and is the first piece of data that we're going to go off of when we're looking ahead to the next Fed meeting. Are we going to expect a cut or a pause in the next meeting? PCE coming in high would definitely shake the market, and we have been seeing other inflation reads coming in a little higher as well, such as right here, CPI. We got this on December 11th, and it was the highest read we've seen since pretty much around the summertime. Our next read for CPI and PPI, of course, will be in early January, so PCE here will be important to watch. And like I said, it'll be the first piece of data that we'll get after this Fed meeting, and will kind of set the tone for the next meeting, at least until we get PPI and CPI in early January. Now, I do have two articles I want to go over. This one, predicting the bull cycle peak. Now, if you watched my last video, I showed you guys a couple of the things I'm watching for, and this is one of them here, the pi cycle top indicator. And it basically uses two different numbers. It uses the 111-day moving average and the 350-day moving average multiplied by 2. And it's called pi because of the ratio between these numbers, 3.142. And historically, when the 111 DMA crosses above the doubled 350 DMA, Bitcoin has hit its top. What's crazy is how accurate it is. In 2017, it predicted the peak within 1 day. In 2021, it called the exact day of the price cycle peak. Trust me, people will be watching this. When it flashes sell, there will be certainly a reaction. Now, this article, it tries to turn past data into future predictions. And assuming the current trend holds, according to this, these two moving averages are set to cross on August 24 of 2025. Marking the likely bull cycle peak date. You know, that is definitely very possible, and I would not be surprised. And following the cycle, that definitely makes sense as well. Now, what about the price? Of course, we have diminishing returns. What should we be expecting according to this article? Extrapolating past trends, if returns diminish to 28% above the moving averages, which is consistent with prior cycles, Bitcoin could peak at $310,000. And if returns continue to shrink at a faster rate, the peak could land closer to $256,000. We have another article with a Bitcoin price prediction. We also talk about Solana here. Bitcoin has been running on the speculation of a strategic reserve. We actually have news of different states getting into something like this. We talked about Texas, of course, and we do have now, I believe, Ohio, but we'll save that for another day. But as for Bitcoin, Tony Sycamore, an Instagram analyst, is that IG Instagram? I don't know. The next level that the market will be eyeing is 110,000. A short liquidation cascade has also assisted the Bitcoin price to climb higher due to the availability of large amounts of liquidity at this $105,000 level and above. Now, that is just a short-term prediction, of course. One thing I've been thinking about is chart-wise, Bitcoin to me looks like it's going to be due to cool down. Cycle-wise, I think we end the year strong. Now, this article also talks about Solana and their total net flows, of which they get around 12 million in net inflows per day. This is the highest of all the other blockchains in crypto. And here's a nice little chart here that shows the top 20. You can see that Solana is just blowing everything else out of the water. While there are some things chart-wise making me think we're due for a little bit of a cool down soon, this article says that there's a trifecta of buy signals. And according to Fairlead Strategy, the firm's technical short-term signal for Bitcoin flashed bullish over the past week, flipping from neutral. And this Stockton of Fairlead Strategy says that she sees the potential for Bitcoin to gravitate towards 124,000 in the coming months. Bitcoin's exhibiting short-term momentum after pushing out of its consolidation phase, warranting a bullish bias throughout year-end. On top of that, Bitcoin's daily MA indicator inched towards a buy signal. The MACD is also indicating buy. It flashed a buy signal on Tuesday morning when Bitcoin hit a record of 108,000. Now, she did admit that there's a separate weekly indicator that's in overbought territory. It can stay that way for several weeks among strong momentum. She also mentions the 50 MA, and I think that is definitely a point to look out for if we do pull back. Bitcoin's 50 MA is 90,000. It's actually at 92,000 now, but basically that would bring us about a 15% pullback. And as for the upside target, 124,000, which is a gain of about 17%. So we're looking at either around a 17% gain or roughly a 15% loss. Either we're going to head to about 124,000 or we're going to head down to that 50 MA. And while she does mention the weekly RSI and how it's overbought, but it can keep going, and that is definitely a certainty. You know, one thing I'm looking for cycle top signs is when the RSI on the weekly is much closer towards 90. We did get all the way up to about 88. In past cycles, we have seen a much more overbought RSI on the weekly. And the same can be said about the daily RSI. Typically, we see a daily RSI get up to the like 90 level. The highest we got was 87, 88. So in my opinion, RSI-wise, is not flashing sell. We haven't even gotten to the levels we have been in previous cycles. And of course, we have 2025 to look forward to. Just because 2025 should be bullish doesn't mean we're just going to run up all the way through it. There are going to be corrections. And one pattern I'm watching is this broadening pattern here. We have tightened up and we're kind of following this ascending support line in this area. I think if we break this level, we are going to test that 50 MA. It is currently at 92,000. But you know, if we do break this, I do think we're going to fill out this pattern, and that's perfectly fine. To come down, test 92,000, potentially bounce, hold that level, and then we head higher. That would be a fantastic dip buy opportunity, and I'd welcome a little cool down for Bitcoin. As I've showed you guys the daily, we do have a bearish divergence. The RSI has been losing momentum while the price has been steadily rising. Now here's one thing I want to show you guys with the Bitcoin miners is, you know, Q4 is coming to an end for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's average price throughout Q4 has been well over the 70,000s, probably closer to the 80,000s if not above. Q4 is going to be a fantastic quarter for these Bitcoin miners. Most of them have given guidance out. When we were around like October was when a lot of them were giving Q3 earnings. This was Q3. We were basically stuck. When Q3 started, we basically were in a downtrend. When Q4 started, we basically started our uptrend. Many of these miners gave forward guidance when Bitcoin was 64,000, 67,000, before the breakout of 70,000. I do expect a lot of these Bitcoin miners to surprise us with profitability, just like we saw early 2024, when profitability wasn't necessarily expected, but many achieved it because of Bitcoin's run up in price from when guidance was given to when earnings was given. And I do expect this here. And I also do expect we're going to have an anticipatory run up because Wall Street knows this is coming. Now that this quarter is coming to an end, Bitcoin has held up a lot of its gains and is even creating new all-time highs very recently. This is fantastic for the Bitcoin miners. If we see even a pullback, as long as we hold 90,000, for instance, as long as we're not back down in the early Q4, you know, October, like in the 60,000, if we don't see the 60,000s this cycle, these Bitcoin miners are going to have a consistent, profitable cycle for the rest of this time. 2025, the vast majority of it will be profitable. Q4 for many will be profitable. Maybe even some of 2026 will see profitability as we enter the bear market, as Bitcoin starts pulling back from say 200,000, 250, 150,000 for instance. If we start pulling back from there, they still have a lot of time to be profitable while Bitcoin pulls back from 150 to wherever our bear market low could be. So my opinion is don't give up on the Bitcoin miners. Although things have admittedly been a bit rough for them, we are getting out of the rough times where they went back to unprofitability because of the halving, and we're getting back to the good times where hopefully you loaded up during these rough times, because you will be happy in a couple months, mark my words. But anyways, how are you guys feeling about Bitcoin today? How are you feeling about the Fed meeting? Are we getting a rate cut? Are we getting a surprise pause? Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.